These clothes might have ended up in landfill. Instead, they're going to the people who need them most here in the UK. The average Brit currently throws away around 35 items of clothing per person per year. And despite the fact that many of us are donating that unwanted clothing to the charity shop in the hope that it will be reworn by someone else, less than a fifth of our clothing waste is actually recycled or reused. The bigger likelihood is that it will be thrown away to landfill. Meanwhile, 13% of the UK population can't afford clothing. And this problem isn't unique to the UK. How is it that societies in the global north can have the simultaneous problem of both too much and too little clothing at the same time? In today's video, we're talking about the realities of clothing poverty in the UK and visiting a small but mighty non-profit here in London that's trying to make one problem a solution for the other. Let's get into it. Before we do, welcome back to my channel. My name's Katie. I talk about sustainable fashion, online culture around overconsumption, and tips on how to make your own wardrobe more sustainable. So if that sounds good to you, then subscribe to this channel and follow me on all my other social media. And let's get into the video. There are almost two opposing realities happening at the same time here in the UK. The average Brit has 118 items of clothing in their wardrobe, a relatively massive fraction of which goes completely unused. And we're sending 140 million pounds worth of clothing to landfill every year. The infrastructure we have in place is struggling to handle the amount of clothing we're chucking away. And charity shops are sending clothes overseas because they can't sell the volume and the quality of the clothing we're giving them. At the same time, an estimated 5.5 million UK adults, or roughly 13% of the population, as I mentioned earlier, are currently unable to afford clothing for everyday life, such as going to work, school, going out with friends, or even just leaving the house. Thanks to soaring inflation and rising bills, clothing banks have seen a parallel rise in usage to food banks here in the UK. It's a complete paradox, and some are saying it's a hidden human rights issue. Yet, the issue of clothing poverty is hardly ever mentioned. It's still quite a taboo subject both here in the UK and in our online culture. Part of the reason I think we're yet to talk about this issue is because clothing abundance is so normalized online. So much of social media revolves around consumption, and fashion is a massive part of the discussion. Our feeds are filled with haul videos and unboxing videos. Having a major wardrobe clear out is a normalized occurrence for so many of us, and seeing people sort through their masses of clothing and send them away to donation or landfill has become entertainment in its own right, with major celebrities and influencers like Emma Chamberlain purging their wardrobes in front of the camera. And often the intention of donating these items is mentioned, which seems like the right thing for us to do. Yet TikTok never seems to pause and ask itself what's happening with the stuff we're buying and throwing away and buying and throwing away. Like I said, so many of us are happy to believe that donating is the perfect solution, that the clothes we give to charity shops is going to be reworn and resold to someone else, and it's kind of like a guilt-free way of continually buying and purging your closet. And a massive part of this is that brands are telling us this is the case so that we continue to buy from them. And although in some cases this does actually happen, our clothing gets reworn and it's great and it has another life, there's been information telling us for years now that for a large majority of our donated clothing, this isn't the case. That instead of our clothing staying in that charity store that we gave it to, it's instead shipped off and ends up contributing to the problem of waste colonialism to the global south. And even though so many of us know this, it's not always easy to know what the alternatives are, especially when donating can be so time effective, convenient, and a publicly acceptable way to get rid of the clothes you don't want. Although, like I said, the information that donating isn't always the best option has been floating around for a while, I think it's going to be thrust into the limelight even more this year, thanks in part to recent events that have hit the mainstream media. From the devastating fire that raged through Cantamanto, Ghana's second-hand market where a lot of our clothing ends up, to the recent wildfires in Cali, where people turned well-intentioned clothing donations into a dumping ground of clothes unfit for reuse. These events have got people talking about where our clothing should end up and whether there might be better alternatives than simply dumping it without thought. I think not only are we as consumers thinking about this more, the fashion industry is also being forced to think about it. Last year, there were urgent calls from textile recycling centres in Europe, warning that they were on the brink of collapse. due to the volume and the lack of resellability of the clothing that they have been swamped with. These three examples alone kind of show that blindly donating our clothing is doing more harm than good in most cases. But the UK government has for years ignored calls to review the need for better infrastructure and policies to help distribute clothing from those who have too much of it to those in desperate need. Instead, charities have had to step up to do the work, like Give Your Best, a small non-profit here in the UK who is trying to fix that paradox of scarcity in some areas and abundance in the others. And I was lucky enough to meet the team, visit their new store in London, and talk to the founder, Sol Escobar, and valued member, Kemi, who used to use the service as someone in clothing poverty and is now employed by the team. But before I show you guys some of that footage, let's talk about what Give Your Best does. The charity has been dubbed the Depop for Donations by Vogue because its easy-to-use website offers clothing free of charge to the most vulnerable people here in the UK. Not only those suffering from clothing poverty, but also refugees, those seeking asylum, people escaping domestic violence, and so many more vulnerable citizens. Everyone is welcome and everyone is offered a choice with the clothing they're given. Give Your Best has had a rapid expansion from what started as a small Instagram page run by Sol, where she put up some of her clothing and some of her friends' clothing and people could directly message her to reserve it, has now grown into a platform with thousands of clothing options for thousands of people to shop online, as well as a gorgeous new store in Islington, North London, which offers a pay it forward model where people can come in and shop like a normal charity store and it pays for people in clothing poverty to shop for free online. Give Your Best offers such a vital resource for clothing distribution here in the UK. For the people living in clothing poverty or vulnerable people with little access to clothing, it is a free resource for them to have the choice of what they want to wear. No questions asked, no financial checks to make sure you're eligible. It's hard to overstate the impact that can have on people that simply can't afford anything to wear.
There's a lot of research into clothing poverty and into how it affects so many areas of your life, from access to employment, to access to education, social life, mental health.
I heard of this charity called Give Your Best, and I sent an email to them. To my surprise, they just say, "What's your style?" Imagine them asking me. I know most charities, they'll just pack a bundle of clothes and give it. And they ask you, "What's your style?" I say, I don't mind anything. They say, "No, tell us what you like wearing," for them to give you a choice. I say, "Really?" I was thinking it's a joke. Then I told them my style, and to my surprise, they brought 5 different clothes from my size for me to wear to my one interview. And from then, they told me that I can shop online. I can shop 5 times a week. I can shop for me. I can shop for my kids also.
As the name Give Your Best suggests, there's a massive priority on the quality of clothing on offer.
Our motto is, what you give to a person shows them what you think of them. And so if you wouldn't give this to a loved one because it's not in good shape and you wouldn't want them to think, oh, you think this is what I'm worth, then why would you give it to anyone?
Yeah. Which has a massively positive impact on the people relying on this service.
There was a day I shopped a cloth from Give Your Best. It still has a tag on it, and the tag was $950. Imagine someone donating that kind of for someone like me.
The store in North London itself is gorgeous, and the team have hosted free shopping days where anyone can come in and pay for what they can, which means that those living in clothing poverty could come into the store and shop in person, which is a luxury a lot of us take for granted. Obviously, this is a massive benefit to the people living in clothing scarcity, but for those of us wanting to donate, it's an amazing resource too. There are so many access points Give Your Best offer to donate your clothing in the easiest way possible. Online, in store, various bestie bins that they put up in places around the UK where you can literally just leave your clothing and it will get picked up. Obviously, accessibility like that is so important, but I think the biggest advantage is knowing that your clothing will be appreciated rather than part of a global problem.
For them, they know they donate clothes to charities, but they don't know where the money or the things are going. This thing is actually for people like me. I want to say, this is not just a charity shop. It has helped me. Yeah. So it's going to help other people. I am a lived experience. I know what it is. They've helped me. Actually, I have benefited from it.
Give Your Best have an amazingly high success rate for distributing the clothing that they're given.
I was speaking to some of your lovely volunteers and employees today, and they were saying all of your clothing pretty much gets sold on the website. You don't really have.
We really have. I think in the past 4 years we've had a bag of waste.
And if they are given clothing that needs a little bit of TLC, workers like Kemi are on hand to do a little bit of upcycling to make sure that that clothing can still be enjoyed. This kind of leads me on to the other amazing thing that Give Your Best provide, which is a third space for the community. Not only is the store super cute as a physical retail place where everyone can shop, the team have also been putting on community events like sewing workshops to help people make their clothes last or to learn a new skill. And in addition to the service it provides for the people in clothing poverty and the people in clothing abundance, Give Your Best is also providing a massive service to the UK fashion industry. Whilst they primarily take donations from citizens with too much clothing, Give Your Best has also created numerous partnerships with brands here in the UK looking to offload overstock that they can't sell with the idea of reselling them on the platform.
What we offer is a solution for the unsold stock that it's both sustainable but actually also socially impactful, so that we ensure that instead of ending up in landfill, it ends up alleviating clothing poverty. And so we call it redistribution. And so we kind of want to add that redistribution to the arts of circularity, reuse, recycle, repair, etc.
Whilst this isn't addressing the root issues of overproduction in the fashion industry, it does stop those brands from sending that clothing straight to landfill or flooding charity stores even further. Unfortunately, and despite the fact that Give Your Best is clearly doing everything they can to help the problem, there's still issues that need to be addressed. Clothing poverty is such a large systemic issue that one small brand can hardly be expected to take it on by itself.
For us, as an organisation, as a non-profit that is tackling a social and environmental issue, our end goal is to go out of business. Is to not be needed anymore. The moment we're not needed, we've accomplished our goal, right?
And I love that because that's the exact opposite of most fashion brands.
Exactly.
Right now. It's like you don't want to be here anymore.
We don't. It's probably not going to happen in my lifetime, unfortunately, but that is our end goal.
Without downplaying the work that Sol and the team have done, we have to ask why we're relying on non-profits to do all that hard work. Where is the support from the government? And where is the support from the fashion industry? Fashion brands are relying on charity stores and organisations like Give Your Best to manage the waste that is baked into their system. And they'll happily keep doing that as long as it means profit. Without the government stepping in to rein in these brands, the issue of clothing waste will never go away, even if we solve the other issue of clothing scarcity. And that leads me on to the solutions we need to talk about after everything we've learned in this video. Like I've mentioned, the government is not doing nearly enough to help this issue, and they should be stepping up in multiple ways. One of the ways they should be helping is financially supporting these charities who are basically doing their dirty work for them. Although this would hugely benefit charities like Give Your Best and allow them to expand operations, it also still keeps the responsibility on the charities rather than the government to deal with clothing waste. So the government should also be investing in things like recycling infrastructure and public awareness campaigns, teaching consumers how to make their clothes last longer and what to do once they're no longer able to be worn, rather than just dumping them outside a charity store. Again, though, that's not really fixing the root of the issue. You can help manage clothing waste and you can teach consumers all you like, but if you don't penalise the brands that are producing so much clothing and therefore turn off the tap, as it was, on the issue of abundance in fashion, then you're really not going to get anywhere. In order to make meaningful change, the government can penalise brands by introducing legislation that puts the responsibility back on brands to think about a clothing's lifetime and circularity and what will happen once the consumer's done with it. And thankfully, this kind of EPR legislation is being introduced in the EU right now, so hopefully this issue will start to improve, but it definitely can't come soon enough, and you know fashion will drag its heels. Despite the fact that government intervention might be a little bit slow, there's things you can do right now to support Give Your Best. Thankfully, they gave this really helpful post which talks about all the ways that you could help. The easiest of which is just giving them clothing.
We need your time, we need your money, we need your clothes.
Like Kemi said, you can also get involved in other ways, like volunteering, like becoming a bestie that uploads clothing to the platform when people don't have time to do it themselves. You can obviously financially support them, or you could simply just spread the word and tell your friends and your family about what Give Your Best are doing and let them know that there is an alternative to throwing their clothes away or literally putting them outside a charity store. However you might want to help will be greatly appreciated. And although Give Your Best is an amazing charity charity and is obviously very close to my heart, they aren't the only ones working on this issue that could use your support. If you don't live in the UK, for example, you can simply Google clothing poverty charity near me and see what comes up. Have a look at their website, look to see if they need donations or if they need volunteers. But I think the easiest thing that is so important is just knowing more about clothing poverty and talking about it. So by watching this video, you've kind of already taken a step to help the issue. And if you want to share this with your friends and family, then it can help normalize an issue that seems to be so taboo online and in person, and we can start to make a difference. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun filming this one, and I want to say a massive thank you to Sol and the team at Give Your Best for having me. This was a really exciting project for me. I loved going into store. I loved interviewing and creating a story rather than reporting on someone else's, which is something I'm trying to do a bit more on this channel. So please do let me know if you liked it, if you have any ideas on what else you want to see. I really want to start a series that looks deeper into the fashion industry and its shortcomings and its problems and its solutions, and just kind of shine some light on an industry that is often shrouded in darkness and secrecy. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one, and have a lovely day. Bye.